It's the most wonderful time of the year, or should I say the most annoying time of the year, that floods your Netflix suggestions with Christmas Hallmark movies that you don't need to watch because you can see the whole plot by simply looking at the release poster. Why am I complaining? Because I watched one? Netflix just released Falling for Christmas starring Lindsay Lohan, and I had a bit of hope. I thought the movie can't be that bad if Lindsay Lohan was involved. I was wrong. I wasted 1.5 hours of my life with mediocre acting, screenplay that sounds like it was done by a 10-year-old, and a storyline that's full of plot holes but at the same time predictable to the scene. To be fair, I should have known after seeing the premise, which was the following. Now that sounds pretty simple, and to be fully transparent with you, it is. I'm not sure how they managed to stretch this movie out to 93 minutes. So, this disaster of a movie that should have gotten me into Christmas spirit just made me want to go into hibernation so that I can fall asleep, wake up 2 months later when there's no trace of Christmas left, and just pretend that it was all a bad dream and not reality. Unfortunately, I'm not a chipmunk, so I can't do that. Instead, let's go through the plot like it's not absolutely predictable anyway and talk about some things that went wrong. In the opening scene, we are introduced to the main character, Sierra, that's played by Lindsay Lohan. She's the hotel heiress. And if you couldn't tell by the automatic curtains and the fancy bed, don't worry, there's a nice montage with some funky Christmas music that shows you just how fancy and expensive the hotel and ski resort that she stays at is. Very important point here, if you're looking for subtlety in this movie, it's not there, ever. And I get it. Why put a bit more work into something when you can make it easier for the viewer and the producers? Following that montage, we see Sierra's boyfriend Ted having a phone call with her and just casually chilling in a huge limousine alone. Just rich people stuff, I guess. It's pretty obvious from the beginning that Ted is not necessarily the wholesome main character we're supposed to root for. He's very focused on his social media career that makes up roughly 70% of his personality. The other 30% consists of being dull and selfish. So, long story short, he clearly is the stereotypical bad boyfriend that gets replaced by a better looking love interest towards the end of the movie. Generally, the characters and their personalities in this movie are as deep and complex as a shallow puddle filled with clear water. So they're actually not deep or complex at all. Also, remember the better looking love interest I talked about? Here he is, or should I say, here is his stunt double overstating skiing, which I did not know was a possibility until I saw this. He's not taking part in any competition, I checked. Nevertheless, he's jumping in those skis like his life depends on it. For what reason, I don't know. Luckily, skiing in a very cringy way is not all this character does. He actually tries to convince Sierra's dad, the wealthy guy who owns hotels, to invest into his small, charming lodge because they don't have enough guests anymore. What a terrible, sad story about a good-looking guy who just needs some financial support. In every other context, I would tell you to not send that man your credit card information because it definitely is a scam. But don't worry, this movie cannot take your money. It can only rob you of 1.5 hours of your time and the courage to ever watch a Christmas movie again. Also, in this case, the financial trouble is just the most basic trick in the book of Hallmark movies to make us sympathize with Jack Russell. That's the name of the love interest, by the way. His name is very similar to a dog breed. In fact, it's identical. It's like the people working on this movie gave up before they even started trying. And I will literally never finish talking about the plot of this because there are just too many jokes to make. Anyway, Jack obviously doesn't get an investment because he doesn't have much going for him besides being an innocent white boy whose only problem is capitalism. Shallow characters, remember? So poor Jack Russell will have to marinate in his financial trouble for a bit longer. And after being rejected by Mr. Belmont, Jack tries to leave the hotel, but he ends up bumping into Sierra and spilling a bit of his hot drink on her outfit. This is the first encounter of the main characters, and because of the hot chocolate on the designer onesie, they don't get along at first. But that actually does not matter at all, because conveniently, they both forget about this incident anyway. You'll see. So, after Jack gets back to his lodge, there are just a few scenes that are purely there to make him seem even nicer and more relatable than he already is. We get to see his adorable daughter Avi, his mother-in-law, his charming North-style lodge. Yes, that's the name of it. Have I mentioned that the lodge has been in the family for generations? And Jack knows all the friendly guests there by name, because he's just so nice and humble and hardworking. You get the vibe. His daughter and the grandmother end up going to the wishing tree where Avi gets to make a wish and we don't get to see that wish. And in the scene we also have the obligatory mysterious old white man, who is this movie's subtle, and by that I mean pretty plain and apparent because it's a Hallmark movie, personification of Santa Claus. And if I might add, not a great one. I've seen many Hallmark movie Santa Claus characters and this one is just not it. Whoever did casting on that one, don't let them do casting again. And also, if it's that obvious that he's Santa Claus, just based on the plot, you don't need to dress him fully in red. He's an old white man with a beard who's saying inspiring things and he gives people gifts. We get the hints. At the same time, Sierra's rich dad decides to fly somewhere for business or whatever, and Sierra and her unlikable boyfriend take a trip to some remote mountain where they want to take some nice Insta pics. Ted ends up proposing to her on top of the mountain and suddenly the weather changes. They both realize that it's incredibly stupid to go to some random mountain without informing themselves about weather or avalanche danger. That's not really relevant to plot or apparent. I just felt the need to shit talk about that specifically. Also, did you know that using harsh lighting on a green screen can make it look super unrealistic? I'm just asking because it seems like people making this movie didn't know. Anyway, due to strong winds, Lindsay Lohan is blown towards the edge and she can't ski, so she involuntarily skis/falls down the mountain and then ends up hitting her head and eventually just lays there unconscious. Her boyfriend falls down the other side of the mountain because the snow gives way, and through these two completely separate events that coincidentally happen in a span of just seconds from each other, right next to each other, Sierra and Ted end up being in two entirely different places. And now guess who ends up finding Sierra? Yeah, it's Jack, who was on a sleigh ride with some guests, as one does as a blue-collar lodge owner. And although Sierra is the one having a concussion, Jack forgot that they've met before and he spilled a drink on her. It's almost like they have a chance for a fresh start, and all that it took was a concussion and someone who's not good at remembering faces. What a masterpiece of a plot. A while later, Lindsay Lohan wakes up in a hospital with amnesia, and because no one reports her missing. Her dad is still on that trip and Ted is still lost, but he ends up hanging out with some poacher somewhere off the grid. What I should tell you here is that they put so little effort into the subplot concerning Ted being lost that I've decided to not put any effort into explaining it. It doesn't make much sense and there is no need for me to make a joke about it because it already is a joke, just by itself. So what ends up happening is Sierra stays at Jack's lodge because they have empty rooms and she does not like hospital food. I'm not sure if bad food will convince me to stay at a stranger's place while I have amnesia and still recover from a concussion. But no, wait, actually, the moment Lindsay gets to the lodge, she seems to have miraculously recovered from all the symptoms of a concussion besides the amnesia. They literally don't even mention it after she leaves the hospital. And there are more weird things happening. We have a very interesting scene where Sierra looks out the window because she hears a noise. A weirdly animated/puppet raccoon stares back at her, and she's justifiably frightened. I would be scared as well if I would ever encounter something like that. Also, we have a director's mistake here with the chair. It's falling and suddenly it stands. Sloppy work. So, small suggestion from my side, maybe cut budget on the overly motivated stunt double that does too many tricks while skiing anyway, and maybe invested in someone who double checks for plot holes, or someone who knows how to properly deal with a green screen, or a real raccoon that's trained and doesn't look scary. Priorities here are just not set right. More specifically, there are no priorities set in the first place. We have plot holes, director's mistake, bad set design, and we're barely done with the premise. But hey, At least there's a stunt double that excels at skiing. Back to this disaster of a plot. So Lindsay Lohan ends up meeting Avi and Jack's mother-in-law, and they obviously get along great and have a wonderful time. Oh yeah, did I mention that Jack's wife died? Very tragic, and great for displaying a bit of an emotional vulnerability from Jack's side that conveniently also forms a deeper emotional, well, I mean as deep as you can get in a Hallmark movie, right? But basically a deeper emotional connection between Sierra and Jack because they talk about that. After that, the subtle but not actually subtle personification of Santa Claus has another appearance. Then there's a Christmas light ceremony and they go skiing together, so we have some more bonding and some more overly motivated skiing from a stunt double that no one asked for. Then there's the obligatory toy drive that we have in every single Christmas Hallmark movie. Jack seems to be the driving force behind it because he's so great and cares so much about the community. In fact, there is so much superficial bonding between the two of them that Jack even tells Lindsay Lohan about their financial trouble. So naturally, she suggests a Star Lodge fundraiser, but toxic masculinity gets the best of Jack and he refuses to do that because he does not want to take handouts. But right after saying that, he kind of confesses his feelings for Sierra and then walks away pretty fast. Don't ask me why, I just think it's funny how he flees. Eventually he's convinced to throw a Christmas party for all the guests who have stayed at the lodge, and at the same time Sierra's father and boyfriend get back to town and they start looking for her. So Lindsay Lohan ends up getting this nice dress from the mother-in-law that she puts on for the party, and then we have the classic woman walking down the stairs in a supposedly pretty outfit while the man is stunned by her beauty. And right after that, we have a very romantic moment where Sierra and Jack just slow dance alone in a room that's stuffed with Christmas decoration because there was supposed to be a party. And oh look, the guests arrived. They were just a bit late because a snowblower was blocking the road. How nice and convenient for Lindsay Lohan and Jack. They had like 20 seconds to themselves to slow dance and display their love. Jack gives a speech to thank everyone for coming, and a few seconds later we find out why the North Star Lodge was on the brink of bankruptcy. Jack worked for free. He helped tons of people and never charged them, and now that they're here they all decided to pay back their debts. No wonder he doesn't make enough money if he doesn't even charge the few people that stay at his precious lodge. Finance bros would judge him. Hallmark movie directors love him because he's so generous and kind. So after Jack got a bunch of money, the bankruptcy of his North Star Lodge, that was imminent due to bad business decisions that he himself had made, was averted. And as he was about to ask Sierra on stage and thank her, we have a bit of a plot twist, or let's be honest, a pathetic attempt at a plot twist. Sierra's father and fiancé are suddenly there to bring her back home, and she just looks into their faces and immediately recalls her whole rich lifestyle. Remember that Sierra was engaged, but now she also has feelings for a certain someone? To make that very apparent to us, we get a montage of some nice romantic moments between Sierra and Jack. And good thing they put that in there. I would have forgotten about it otherwise. The next day, Lindsay Lohan is back at doing rich people stuff that she used to do before she met Jack. Wait, no. There's something off. She actually denies caviar and she doesn't want to wear designer clothes. And on top of that, she makes herself breakfast. Could it be? Are the movie producers trying to tell us that her stay at the North Star Lodge changed her? Well, I mean, not enough to say no to a press conference where she talks about her absence and the fact that she's engaged to Ted and also about to take a trip with him while having feelings for another man. But still, baby steps. And after a short, inspiring talk with her father, she realizes that Ted does not make her happy. And at the same time, Jack gets a pep talk from Avi. She tells him that this year she made her wish at the wishing tree about him because she wanted him to find someone to love. So obviously now Jack wants to get to the fancy hotel of Sierra's dad. Meanwhile, Lindsay Lohan breaks up with Ted. And Ted, he is fine. He really doesn't give a shit because most of his personality is being an influencer, remember? So eventually Jack reaches the hotel and he confesses his love to Sierra in front of that limousine in which Ted is chilling. And then the bad-casted Santa Claus helps Jack out with directions, and at last, Jack and Lindsay Lohan meet in the backyard of the hotel in front of a huge Christmas tree, and they kiss. Wait, did I say Lindsay Lohan? My bad, it's not Lindsay Lohan. They used her stand-in for the most important scene in the whole movie, and they tried to cover that up with lens flare. And that about sums it up how much effort they put into detail here throughout the whole movie. I think you can see why I'm upset about this dumpster fire of a Christmas movie. I have not mentioned all the inconsistencies and fails that occurred because I can't take any more of this, and I will now need a masterpiece of cinematography to recover from this terrible experience. And I swear, if this movie gets any award or even a nomination, I will